So, let's get right into it. We're going to Cape Town, South Africa. And if you've ever seen pictures, you know it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. But it's also a place with a deep, dark secret. You see, in this city, there's an invisible wall. And just crossing from one side to the other can literally cost you 7 years of your life.
Take a look at this. On the left, that's Namzamo. It's 92% black. It's a community of tin shacks, a place where resources are so scarce that people often have to steal electricity just to get by. Then, right next door, you could literally throw a stone, you have Strand. It's 83% white. A world of mansions, green lawns, swimming pools, you name it. They are right there, side by side, but they are worlds apart.
And that invisible wall between them? It has a very real, very terrifying cost. If you live in the black community, on average, your life expectancy is 7 years shorter than your neighbor in the white community. Let that sink in. 7 years. Just gone. Wiped off your life, simply based on which side of an invisible line you were born on.
So, that's the big question, right? How is this even possible? Apartheid, the whole legal system of racial segregation, it officially ended almost 30 years ago. So how can these divides, these invisible walls, still be so powerful and so deadly today? Well, to figure that out, we have to go back and see how this whole system was designed in the first place.
Because what you have to understand is that the segregation we see today was not some historical accident. Not at all. It was a meticulous design. It was social engineering on a massive scale, built on a foundation of cruel and, honestly, just absurd logic. So how do you even run a system like this? First, you gotta classify everybody. You have to decide who's who, and one of their most infamous methods was something called the pencil test. Seriously, an official would literally stick a pencil in your hair. If it fell out, you were classified as white. If it stayed in, you were black. It was this bizarre, pseudo-scientific nightmare that could tear families apart. One brother classified as white, the other as black, all because of the texture of their hair.
And this wasn't just some random act of cruelty. Oh no, it was systematic. They built this segregated society piece by piece, law by law, over decades. First, in 1913, the Natives Land Act basically stripped black people of the right to own land. Then, the Group Areas Act in 1950 forced them into designated zones. Then, the pass laws made it so they had to carry a passbook just to move around their own country. And finally, the Bantu Education Act created a deliberately inferior education system to crush any hope for the future.
And if you're wondering what the point of all this was, well, they weren't exactly shy about it. This quote is from Hendrik Verwoerd, the guy they literally called the father of apartheid. He said there was no place for a black person in the European community above being a simple laborer. It's all right there. The goal was never just separation. It was about keeping an entire population of people in a permanent state of servitude.
And that reveals the cold, hard economic logic of the whole system. See, apartheid wasn't just about pure racial hatred. It was an economic machine. By taking away land, controlling movement, and destroying education, they engineered the perfect workforce, a massive pool of cheap, landless labor with nowhere else to go. And that labor was needed to power the country's incredibly profitable gold and diamond mines, which, of course, were all owned by whites.
So for decades, this brutal system just churned along. But then, in 1976, everything changed. A single photograph captured a moment so shocking, so powerful, that it would spark a global movement and begin the slow, painful process of tearing that system down.
The breaking point was, of all things, education. The government decided that all black schools had to start teaching in Afrikaans, the language of their white oppressors. So, in the township of Soweto, thousands of students walked out of their classrooms and into the streets to protest. And it's so important to remember this. They were protesting with books in their hands, not weapons. The police responded to this peaceful protest with live ammunition. In the chaos, a 13-year-old boy named Hector Peterson was shot and killed. A fellow student picked up his body and a photographer snapped a picture. That one photo went viral, 1970 style. It was on the front page of newspapers all over the globe. And suddenly, the world couldn't look away anymore. The brutality of apartheid had a human face.
That photo was the tipping point. The world finally started to act. It became what's known as a double squeeze. On the outside, you had international sanctions kicking in. Big global banks refused to give loans. Companies like Coca-Cola and GM started pulling out. And at the same time, from the inside, Nelson Mandela's party, the ANC, ramped up the resistance with strikes, boycotts, and even armed attacks.
The pressure just became too much. The government had no choice but to negotiate. And then came that incredible day, February 11, 1990. After 27 years in prison, Nelson Mandela walked free. It was this unbelievable moment of triumph. People were dancing in the streets all over the world. It really felt like the dream of a new, equal rainbow nation was finally happening. But this is where the story takes a really sharp and complicated turn. Because the political fight was won, but a secret economic battle was just getting started. And it led to what's now called the Elite Compromise, a deal that probably saved South Africa from collapsing, but also locked in the very inequality they had fought to destroy. Which brings up the key question, right? Mandela and the ANC, they had the political power. They had the support of the entire world. So what stopped them? Why didn't they just tear down the economic engine of apartheid? Why not just give the land back and take over the mines? Because look at this shift. It was dramatic. The ANC's original plan was clear. Take back the land that was stolen and nationalize the mines to bring the country's wealth back to the people. But what happened in the final compromise? The complete opposite. Private property rights, meaning the land stayed with its current owners, would be protected. And there would be zero nationalization. It was a total 180.
So you have to ask, why? Why on earth did they do it? We have to understand the impossible situation Mandela's new government was in. The economy was on the brink of collapse. If they nationalized the mines, global investors would have fled overnight. The white business community, which was basically the entire economy, threatened to pack up and leave. And on top of all that, armed white militias were gearing up for a civil war. So they made an agonizing choice, prioritize stability now over radical justice, just to keep the new nation from dying at birth. And that compromise, that deal made decades ago, brings us right back to that invisible wall in Cape Town. It explains why, even though the racist laws are gone, the fundamental design of the system is still running. They took the software out, but they left the hardware untouched.
And the numbers today are just mind-blowing. Look at land. The white population makes up about 8% of the country, right? They still own 72% of the farmland. The black population, which is 8% of the country, owns just 4%. The pattern that was set in stone by that 1913 Land Act, it's pretty much still here.
And you see the exact same story inside the corporations. Whites still hold 2/3 of all executive management jobs. Black South Africans, just 14%. The economic power structure, it basically got frozen in place. The same people who held the wealth and power during apartheid are, by and large, the same people who hold it today.
And here's the really chilling part. The system got so good at what it doesn't need the racist laws anymore. It's on autopilot. You don't need a pass law to keep people in a poor township when they can't afford to live anywhere else. You don't need a racist education act when all the best schools and jobs are in neighborhoods they can't get to. The inequality just perpetuates itself.
Which leaves us with this final haunting question. The architects of apartheid are gone. The laws have been torn up, but the machine they built is still running, all on its own. So the challenge for South Africa today is just immense. How do you stop a ghost in the machine? How do you possibly dismantle a system that no longer even needs a driver?